What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you, and one that maybe is outside the box, maybe it isn't. We'll get into that later, but we're going to go over the latest offering from Helmet, Left. This also comes out on the 10th of November on earmusic. This band formed in New York City in 1989. This is their 9th full-length album overall. First one since 2016's Dead to the World. We've both been longtime fans of this band. We're 90s kids, we're 90s teens.
Yep.
And we both had copies of their absolutely awesome album, Meantime. And fantastic album.
Playing in the background.
Oh, it's still absolutely
still
crushing.
A banger. I love that record. Man.
Yeah, I've been following this band pretty much ever since, and oh yeah, like Betty was pretty awesome. I like the debut Strap It On, and then kind of after that, it's kind of a mixed bag. And there's always part of me that kind of holds out hope that I'm going to get something once again really close to that Meantime energy, because I come back and jam that album frequently.
I do too. Although it's the first time I've heard it in a while. We were jamming it upstairs, and it's still, I love every song on that album.
And this band is, well, again, like, I don't know if we'd ever call them like metal, but I would definitely call them heavy. They kind of fit in that, like, well, it wasn't alt metal at the time. I guess they called it like heavy alternative. It was also like kind of post-hardcore. They were heavy, they were groovy, they had just, simplistic, minimalistic riffs. They were always pissed off, but occasionally more melodic. Kind of in that same vein as bands like, Quicksand and like Unsane and early Clutch.
Local H.
Yeah. We didn't really know where to categorize them, and I don't know, they were kind of an odd fit for a lot of different crowds, which, kind of made them a little bit more obscure.
But I mean, us reviewing records now here over the years, I know we've referenced Helmet a bunch.
Tons.
And there's a ton of bands I think out there today that are still influenced at least by early Helmet.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of that straightforward, just minimalistic, kind of chuggy style. Like, the riffs are intricate in their own way, but not. Helmet kind of carved out their own little niche in music, and, well, I mean, it's just kind of hard to describe, but here we go actually really trying to. And I gotta be honest, like, this album is a little hard to digest at times because it's strange. In fact, this is one of the weirdest Helmet albums I think I've listened to in a while.
Yeah, like, it's not really Helmet. There's like little moments, little snippets in time in this album where you're like, it's pretty close, but like I found myself comparing this more to Smashing Pumpkins or Stone Temple Pilots or even bands like Cave In.
Yeah, but all those are still kind of within the realm. Like, all right, the Helmet that we often reference is definitely those earlier albums, but Helmet's career goes past that, and that's where they kind of got strange. But I think some of this is even kind of strange for that. As far back as I would say this really goes is maybe Aftertaste.
Maybe.
And Aftertaste was kind of an odd album. Like, they definitely kind of stripped down the formula, maybe a little bit more accessible. But this one, I don't know if it's necessarily accessible. In fact, honestly, this sounds like it's just Paige writing whatever the hell he wants, regardless of whether or not it kind of fits in any particular, realm of music.
Not gritty sounding by any means, not really crunchy sounding by any means. Very clean production.
Yeah, which works in some spots, but at least for the overall Helmet we were going for, not necessarily because I like my Helmet gritty, which sounds like I'm referencing something else. But I'm not. So take that, internet.
Oh, gotcha.
Now this album opens up with a relatively heavy song and one of the earlier singles, Holiday, which starts off, well, it's just sort of like straightforward, like alt-rock strumming, like it's, kind of atmospheric, and Paige is just sort of like singing listfully, like, oh, and then the breakdown hits, and all of a sudden he's just kind of cussing you out. Like, I'm pretty sure he called you a dickwad and, a whole bunch of other stuff. I was like, wow, man, these are mean lyrics.
That song in particular sounds like a more modern kind of like indie band covering Helmet.
Yeah, like you got like some hardcore band that wants to do, you know, kind of a noise rock thing, but they also want to do like almost a Weezer-ish sort of thing. Like it's got a poppy chorus. And there's a lot of like big poppy choruses on here, or at least like Paige's version, because again, like Paige is sort of a unique musician, and we're going to get more into that because this album got stranger as it went on. But right from the rip with songs like Holiday, Gunfluff, and New York City Tough Guy, it's kind of that Helmet style where like the riffs are minimalistic. You know, there's not a lot of like really strange chord progressions, but how they're arranged is kind of odd. Like in terms of like the riffing and the patterns themselves to his breakdowns, like they are kind of uniquely his.
Mostly broken riffing or a little bit of like off time. I mean, not really. Sometimes like Makeup has an off time groove in it that's really weird. Dislocated, and we'll get more to that song, has an off time groove, but they're like really just like broken up little snippets of riffs.
Yeah, an odd syncopation. Like the end of Gunfluff has this weird, like you get that strumming sort of broken down riff in the background, but there's also like these squawks that kind of come in and, you know, off time patterns, like you just like it's not like full on like Meshuggah, but it's like just odd. And then like Bombastic has this, you know, it's a very straightforward riff, I guess, if you were to play it more straightforward, but Paige has got it like kind of oddly broken down to the point where the riff pattern is maybe like more complex than it actually really needs to be, but it also kind of makes it unique.
Yeah, so take like a basic punky riff and just change how the riff comes in on the beat. So like instead of coming in on the 1, sometimes it comes in on the 2, sometimes it comes in on the 3. It's still in 4/4, it's just broken up really weird.
Yeah, I mean, even the drums occasionally go a little bit more off the reservation in terms of like off-time patterns, but a lot of it is the guitar work. And when it's more straightforward, at least kind of closer to like the Helmet I was looking for, like NYC Tough Guy, you know, it's actually can be kind of catchy. Like, you know, he's got an odd structure, and I mean, if you've been listening to Helmet for years, probably know what I'm talking about, but they're oddly catchy. Like he's got this cool descending riff that is on that song that kind of kicks it off. And when he gets down the chorus, it's a good combination of like a catchy vocal hook,
yeah,
but also like a really kind of just dirty, sludgy, like I wouldn't call any of the riffs like super like metal heavy, but they're like hardcore or hard rock or alt metal heavy. Like I don't necessarily know how to describe it. Again, it's Helmet. Like that's the baseline thing I could say. Like, oh yeah, no, I get it.
Like the song "Dislocated." That's one of my actually more favorite songs on this record. It sounds a little bit more like old school Helmet. You have some chunky riffs. There's a really cool actually batch of isolated drum and vocal things that go together that just kind of set the song off. But then also in the melody in that song, it's almost got like a dirty kind of southern twinge to it.
I got some blues licks in there, and they're kind of like peppered in on the breakdowns because there's, you know, big open sections.
The breakdowns.
Yeah, they're open sections of vocals and drums. Like there's not even a bass playing behind it. And Paige is just kind of like, you know, shouting and singing things. And, you know, lyrically, I mean, it's always been kind of weird with Helmet. Like, I'm never really sure what all he's talking about, but it doesn't matter. I'm there for the riffs.
Sure.
But what really set that song off was the weird, spacey, kind of bluesy bridge on it. And there's some like interesting spacey moments on here. Like Reprise is like kind of an odd build and like layered vocals. It's kind of trippy, like it's psychedelic.
There's weird clocks. And
yeah.
Like crooning hums.
It's a bit disorienting. It's strange, but on this bridge on here, there's this weird riff that is kind of like atonal, but it's oddly catchy. Like honestly, it reminds me a lot of Queens of the Stone Age. And I'm reasonably sure Queens of the Stone Age were partially influenced by Helmet because there's a lot of stuff in Queens of the Stone Age that kind of has like Helmet-ish qualities. But it's really odd, and then they throw like some guitar harmonies on top of it that are also really odd, and it just has this weird kind of like off-kilter feel to the entire song. Like honestly, the song kind of sounds like it's drunk, and yeah, you know what, this is the kind of drunk person I would kind of party with, like, because this is an interesting one. Like this is, you know, the drunk that has a lot of stories, and all of them end with handcuffs.
But as we're going for weird, and I don't recall this ever being presented in Helmet. Actually, there's two things I don't recall, but we're going to get to that later. And Tell Me Again, first of all, that's a really weird song. It opens up with this weird like slide acoustic thing, and then the riff is all kind of like wobbly almost.
It's a lap steel, I think.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a lap steel.
Yep. But it's a ballad, and it's oddly really good. It reminds me a lot of Smashing Pumpkins' song "Disarm."
Yeah, it's strange. Like, again, you have that lap steel, and then you just get into this like kind of like more dry, barren sort of like acoustic ballad, and vocally he's kind of like keeping the harmonies to a minimum on this one. Like it's just sort of a straightforward vocal take, but then there's like a string section in it, and the string section sounds really good.
It works.
Yeah, no, it's oddly catchy. It feels very heartfelt too, and it's a huge standout on this album just because, again, it's like so vastly different, because a lot of the stuff I would still say is very familiar to fans of Helmet. Like, regardless of what era you've been listening to, like, Paige definitely has a style of writing, and I would say it is definitely his. But there was one wrinkle in here that I really wasn't expecting, but also reminded me of something else in here, and that is the last track, Resolution.
Yeah, I actually really dig the fuck out of this. Swingy, jazzy, instrumental. Reminds me of the Aristocrats.
Yeah. I mean, well, considering what we were listening to, it reminded me of the whole, like, improvisational jazz scene from Spinal Tap. Just because, anyway. But it reminded me that I've watched interviews with Paige Hamilton in the past, and he was kind of a low-key fascinating character. Like, he dated Winona Ryder for a little bit. Yeah, I know. But the thing that's more relevant here is the fact that he is a jazz player. And he actually learned to play jazz guitar like at a very early age. And then after that went on to form Helmet and just kind of wanted to deconstruct music and be like less technical and more sort of like aggro and primal. And by that maybe disappoint his guitar teachers, because he was like, I just want to play the heavy stuff. But this is the first time I think he's like really, really shown enough, because like if you listen to like Helmet solos, they're squawky, they're weird, they're noisy, and you can pick out some weird like kind of like jazzy progressions in them, but again, they're always like just dissonant and just crazy sounding. Here, it's clean.
Yep.
And you can hear every individual note, and it is like some of the smoothest playing I think I've ever heard him do.
If I had to really pick a favorite song on this album, oddly enough, it would be the instrumental jazz one. It's really quite well done.
Yeah, it's like he channeled the whole chase scene from Bullet. And I was like, no, I'm going to kind of rock it out. It gets a little like trippy and weird at the end, but at that point, I'm like, you know what, that's cool.
Yeah.
Because, this is just sort of a no-rules, weird song to throw on there, and oddly, it kind of fits with this very strange album. That isn't to say that this album doesn't have its issues. I mean, we already brought up the production being, like, almost sterile.
Uber clean. Things are very, very simplistic. Really, in my honest opinion, you could have made this a 4-song EP with the last track being Resolution as a gift.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is sort of an exercise in what Helmet does. Again, very minimalistic. And it's mostly about, like, how they arrange the songs versus, like, the technicality of them. It's technical rhythmically at times, but in terms of, like, the riffing, like, it's very straightforward. It's just kind of broken up very oddly. And, well, another big issue, and it's an issue that I've always had, I've never been a huge fan of Paige's vocals. And, like, in the early days where he was just, like, yelling and shouting, and he occasionally got his, kind of monotone cleans, it wasn't so bad because it was a little bit more sparing.
Well, and it fit the music a lot better, too.
And while he does do some gruffer vocals on here, it's not enough, and there's a lot of just very flat singing. And even some very obvious sour notes, like Dislocated and Powder Puff, they just have, like, some just glaring sour notes. And there's a lot of vocal layering for, a harmony effect, but they're also odd, and sometimes, like, the vocal layers will come in at odd points. Like, it kind of matches up with the weird breakdowns and such.
Yeah, they just don't really sync up. Like, again, we talked about, riffs coming in at odd places in a normal time signature. The layering of the vocals do too, and sometimes when it comes in, you get those sour notes because they're trying to match up these harmonies with the layers, but they didn't like they forgot to go to the click. I don't know, but where they all come in, it just sounds like an eh. You're like, ooh.
Yeah, no, it stands out and not in a good way. And while I give him credit for, not trying to be overly modern or anything like that, like this is definitely very on the nose for what he does. There are a lot of songs in here that I just think are filler, like Bombastic, granted it had the interesting riff, but the song itself is just kind of bland. Makeup kind of sounds like a B-side of STP, except without Scott Weiland on vocals.
And the lyrics are dumb as fuck in that song.
Yeah, sometimes, again, like the lyrics I don't get. Like sometimes they sound like they're more profound, and then other times he's just swearing at you and calling you a dickwad.
I mean,
I don't know. Songs stand out maybe for being quirky more than they are memorable, and that's kind of a big issue with this one. And that sucks because I really love this band still. Like, there's still part of me that is hoping for like a Meantime or a Betty Part 2 or Strapping On Part 2. But I mean, to Paige's credit, I'm glad he's just out there doing what he does and just kind of marching to the beat of his own drummer. Like, he just writes stuff that's odd, and I mean, it will definitely find fans' ears. But for me, overall, I'm going to give this 2.5 stars. Like, there's some good stuff on here, and maybe some songs that could have been more fine-tuned. But there's a lot of stuff in here that's just strange. And if it's not just strange, well, sometimes it's just kind of boring. That being said, I do think there's some cool standouts on here. And, man, the Resolution jam is just... That's just,
I love it.
Yeah, that's just absolutely nuts. And, again, showcases, like, how, like, talented this dude is that no one seems to think can play like that because he's been making noisy rock all this time. If you're a longtime fan of Helmet, I'm sure there's stuff you will find on here. This, again, doesn't go back to what I consider the glory days, but, I mean, it's got its moments, and I kind of appreciate it for being just a strange album that literally sounds only like Helmet, except even weirder. So, yeah, if you like weird 90s alt-rock / post-hardcore / Helmet, just check this out. It's a Helmet album, and it's weird.
I'm going to go ahead and give it 2 stars. It's really weird, and it's not even remotely close to anything I was expecting. Now, granted, I haven't listened to Helmet since Betty, and that was quite some time ago. And really, outside of the album Meantime, I probably couldn't quote you a whole lot of songs from the other 3 records I liked. Even the songs that were weird by nature were still a little too weird. And, all right, here's the thing. Maybe not have a big sing-songy chorus all the time, especially on the songs that were a little bit catchier and or heavier and or riffier and or whatever. Like, every time there was a build-up to something, there was never a payoff for it. It just went to either singing or, to some, like, oddly clean section. To be honest, outside of the song Dislocated, maybe Tell Me Again, Resolution was probably my fucking favorite. And that was just jazzy and instrumental. Like, that's actually a very well done song. I'm actually highly impressed. But that doesn't, in my opinion, save it enough to warrant anything outside of 2 stars. I said it before and I'll say it again. Really, this could have been a 4-song EP with a gift of Resolution tacked onto the end. Still, nonetheless, it is Helmet. I've been a longtime fan of the band, and even though the band has changed into something that I may not necessarily agree with, I still am a Helmet fan. Meantime molded a lot of who I am as a music listener and a heavy music listener today. Like, I jammed that record non-fucking stop when I was a teenager. So yeah, if you're a fan of Helmet and maybe some other alt-rock bands out of the 90s, Smashing Pumpkins, maybe even Stone Temple Pilots, Quicksand, definitely, I mean, check it out. If nothing else, check it out for nostalgia's sake, because I know we're not the only 2 dickheads that still like Helmet. So, yeah.
So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel, but thrallsmetal.com is where you go to find Thralls Metal stuff. We have new shirts. We have old shirts at a discounted price, and we even have some hats now. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, that is where to find it.
And here at Thralls of Metal, you know, we're always pretty busy beavers. Lots of stuff coming your way. We got our end-of-year list coming. The Judas Priest ranking is finally here. And we're just thankful to be a part of it all. Thank you guys for helping to make Thralls of Metal what it is today. Not just a couple of dudes reviewing albums, but it's more like a family. It's become a giant part of our lives, and we couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to let Nick thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you guys so much for all the support and everything. He's pretty much covered every thank you bit. I think he overthanked maybe a little bit. There was a lot of thank yous.
Hey, thank you.
There he goes again. But yeah, you guys all rule, and we will catch you later.